Not have an end objective?
I think I can answer it a bit, yeah? Because you work with an institute that don't stand for you, yes? So you're going to exhibit like in the Israeli Museum, or the Israeli Museum would like to buy your work, but they don't have any stand for against the occupation, against anything. So why to work with them? And I think now it's not just Israeli artists that start to boycott, it's also Turkish artists and others now that are not, like different cases that the Israeli Museum tried to buy works and artists start to say no. Because they wanted the museum, even if it's a public or whatever, which is not a national museum, yeah, Israeli Museum, it's a private initiative, don't stand for them. And then it's the question why to exhibit, why to sell the work. One of the things that happened in last Herzliya Biennale, and no, it was in the 60 years, 6 of the museum decided to share, blah, 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 all the story. And it was a work of Jumana Emil Aboud. She is a Palestinian artist. They bought her work at the 90s. And they decided to show her work under the 60 years of celebration of Israel without asking her. Because they thought it will be better for her to show her work without asking her, not to put her in the conflict if she wants to show her work or not. And this is unfair for her, even though legally they can present the work. Like, in the other sense, it was not support the artist and what to sign, and just to ask if she feels comfortable with it or not.
Were they aware that she would be unhappy?
Why do you think they never asked her? And they asked the other artists if they would like to.
Museums showed works in their permanent collection all the times without asking. I mean, sometimes it gets...
In this case, when you work with a Palestinian artist and you celebrate the 60 years of Israel, I think if you have something in you, if you're a bit sensitive about the context of the work, you will ask the artist how we feel about it. Like most of the artists informed that they're going to exhibit in these 60 years of exhibition. I know that they contact me about a project that I made like in the 90s, whatever, blah, 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 yes, but they never contact Jumana. She was surprised. For example, another example about Jumana, which is quite a good example, like during Venice Biennale, during the preview, I don't know how many of you been in the preview, but somebody erased the place that she's working from. And day after day, scratch it out, yes.
So they're using her. But
it's not
something, right?
I think there is something that artists want to be supported by the institute here. If they're working with an institute, you want to be supported by.
But you're pretty certain that they knew that she would be unhappy and they just avoided asking her because if they did, she would say no.
I have the records. I made a conference about it.
Yeah.
It's called Sanhedrin with different the museum directors, and the director of the museum tell the story, and I have records about that she decided because she didn't want to put the artist in conflict. Yes.
They didn't take it down when she protested?
She didn't protest. She didn't know.
In the real time in the Israel Museum, she wasn't in the show.
Not in the Israeli Museum, in the Herzliya
In
Museum.
Herzliya, okay. But
She was in the show and she never knew
So
about
what
it.
ended up happening is that there were a show of 60th year of Israel.
Yeah.
And let's take, for example, the last decade. Definitely many, Palestinian artists are part of the scene, but only one artist agreed to take part of the show. Actually, yes, only one. Shuri Faket, but he ended up
in also a very tricky way because the museum bought his work before.
Okay, and what happened is that the curators got beat by everyone, all the journalists, but how come they didn't put any Arabic artist in the show? What does it say about us? The 60th year of Israel, it's clear no Arabs in it. So it ended up backfiring. I understand why people don't want to be part of this thing that celebrates 60th year of Israel, but to understand that eventually it looked totally the other way around. And can you remember the story of Tahir? It was all about they didn't, put any Palestinian in it. It's an ongoing.
But that's
why didn't they go to Israeli schools?
Sorry?
Why did they go to the Israeli schools?
Because they born here.
And was there any restrictions that she placed on? I mean, we buy art all the time, and artists sometimes leave very explicit instructions.
By law, the museum act completely, following the law. The question how you, as a museum director or whatever, deal with it. It's not a question of law. Like as by the agreement, everything they act properly.
I remember
without any problem.
an artist was in a show of conceptual art that one of the curators at MoCA had organized, and she was very upset with funding for the opening from a cigarette manufacturing company, a company that gives money all the time to the arts, or it did when they had it, Philip Morris. And she wrote a very thoughtful letter and said, I would not have agreed to be in this exhibition if I knew that Philip Morris was in. Please take it down and please post the letter, which we did. But I mean, so that's what I'm trying to find out, because I think most museum people try to be responsible. Sometimes, I mean, did the artist actually ever say, you know, I don't want to be.
I met her. She didn't know. I met her.
She wasn't
Oh, she didn't. When the show came and went.
Yes, I just think it's very interesting how certain nationalities become fetishized within the art world, and how, I mean, just look at Chinese art, Indian art. I mean, anytime there's some kind of, you know, new territory that the art world can take over and bring in, and it's a double, I mean, it's a two-sided thing. It's great because it promotes the art of that region that maybe hasn't been exposed on an international level, but it also ghettoizes those artists into a certain category. I mean, Chinese artists, I think, are a great example because there's so many of them, some better than others, some more acceptable in the international world than art world than others. And in the end, we only know like a few names, probably off the top of our head, maybe several. I don't know how well versed people are in Chinese art, but you know, and the rest just kind of fall into this list of names that kind of sound the same, you know. And how does that function, and what kind of service can we do for artists that haven't been exposed on this level? How can we avoid just terming them Palestinian artists, Israeli artists, Chinese artists? I mean, that's the question. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think
it's very.
Or not to mention how to allow people to work in different kind of environment that they are not point and need to be engaged with